Well, on that subject of the future, I do have a question here that came in as a result of a virtually week-long conference entitled Humans to Mars. It was held in Washington, D.C. this week, and the LaRouche Pack Basement team, we had a small delegation that attended that conference. And the question really is along the lines of what you just stated, the potential for a significant shift. In this case, the current situation, which we've demonstrated in various presentations, most notably the high real youth unemployment in the United States. It's a paradox because since 1999 there was an initial failed mission to Mars, at which point NASA decided we will have a 10-year program which included the Spirit and Opportunity missions to investigate whether there is, for one, water on Mars. And then the second 10-year program, which we've now entered into, is whether there is life on Mars. And that's the 10-year perspective for Mars right now. Is there life on Mars? And so there has been, the Curiosity mission was itself a miracle. In a sense, the landing was the test, and it was successful. There are other proposals that came up in the course of this conference about. It's a conference called Humans to Mars, so obviously about how to get human beings to Mars. We were able to land 1 ton on Mars successfully. But one of the issues that came up is in order to land human beings on Mars and include in that package what's necessary for life support, you're talking 30 tons. How are you going to land 30 tons on Mars? And so while there were a number of private companies, private enterprises proposing their Mars missions, which oddly enough don't include getting human beings back from Mars. All of the NASA programs, obviously, are part of what determines a successful program is to Mars and return safely back. Now, what is implied in that, and obviously came up with a number of the figures representing NASA, includes the development of the moon, the development of systems within the Earth, Mars, within that volume, in order to make this successful. So here we have a generation. We have a generation of young people. It's notable, back in the 1930s, you know what they called the generation who won World War II and the generation who landed a man on the moon, the generation who discovered the atom? In the 30s, they called them the lost generation. Today, we have a generation between 18 to 35, which is being considered a lost generation. Yet at the same time, we have this opportunity, Spirit, Opportunity, and now Curiosity. But with the mobilization of this past week, we put our cleats in the turf, and we have some significant traction on Glass-Steagall. So if you can address the perspective for this generation, and what success, a political success, means today for the future.
Well, I have a great deal to say on that, but that will have to be largely for the future. but I can indicate to you what the nature of that question is. First of all, sometimes you have to ask some questions before you can get some answers. And you have to imagine some questions before you can get some answers, at least competent answers. Why should we ever worry about getting man on Mars? Why should we ever assume that we will actually place mankind in its living composition on Mars? Why assume this? Aren't we, if we are able to use a thermonuclear fusion-driven coherent process, we can, yes, we can put something on Mars, large tonnage, absolutely. But we're already there. If we can send objects to Mars, effectively land them, cohere that work with other bodies in the space, and we're full of them out there. We're full of all kinds of rocks out there floating at you, millions of them. Huh? So therefore, do you have to keep asking the question, are we going to land man on Mars? It's not a very suitable place for mankind with his biology at this time. But if mankind's instruments can reach out and touch and control Mars and what happens on Mars by these kinds of institutions going into this thermonuclear fusion coherent process, going into that, we're going to, in effect, bring Mars closer to us because we're going to get there much quicker. We are also going to have to go out there and reach beyond that because we have only it takes about 2 years to go through a cycle where we can be in touch with Mars. So therefore, we're going to have to put some intermediate devices in place out there as well. Mankind may never set foot on any planet, except maybe moon, the nearby moon, and the Earth itself. Well, why do we need to? We can create the instruments by which we can do all the things that have to be done, including exploring the universe, making changes within it, all done by the mind of man based essentially on Earth. Now, I'm not saying that limit is there, but I'm saying we should not be assuming that the question posed is whether man can be put foot on Mars and survive. That is not the question. We've got to stop thinking about playing in rocks out there. These are not rocks, they're systems. And the question is, can mankind and the mind of mankind develop the systems by which we can control these processes? And what the real lesson was of the last landing on Mars, it took us a step up and said, man can do this from remote control. And we can speed things up, and that makes it less remote. We can extend partners to Mars, change the system, so that we are close to Mars all the time, not just once in a certain period of time. So that's the way we have to think. We have to think in terms of don't think like Jules Verne or something like that. No? Think about what mankind's mind and what mankind's capability is. First of all, we have to make mankind unstupid. That means we have to change some presidencies here and there. Because that's the problem. The idea that you depend upon some crazy kind of scheme that you have to achieve this goal, that goal. What's your goal? Your goal is to realize what mankind can represent in the universe and mankind's ability to survive in doing it. We're looking for the means, the best means to do that. If you want to reach Mars and talk to somebody on Mars, get to your telephone, nearest telephone. We'll have to have some special kinds of systems to do the effect of that. But the point is, mankind's question, as far as we know mankind is the only species known to us thus far which is capable of doing this. Animals can't do it. Only human beings can do it. But if we think about what the human mind can do and must make itself able to do, is to find ways to come closer to close control of processes which our hands cannot touch.
Well, thank you very much. That brings a conclusion to our webcast for tonight, and we are very happy to have you back in the studio with us here, Lynn. So this webcast series will obviously continue at this pre-scheduled time every Friday night. We thank you for tuning in tonight. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Leandra. And thank you all for watching. Good night.